Changing gears now. Earlier this morning, House Republicans narrowly passed the party's sweeping domestic policy bill meant to advance President Trump's legislative agenda. The bill now heads over to the Senate, where it could face real challenges. That's something House Speaker Mike Johnson addressed shortly after this morning's early vote.
I was honored to be at the Senate Republican luncheon on Tuesday. And, I encourage them to remember that we have a very delicate equilibrium that we reached on here. A lot of work went into this to find exactly the right balance. And you all saw how perilous that was over the last week as it developed. And I encourage our Senate colleagues to think of this as a one-team effort, as we have, and to modify this as little as possible, because it will make it easier for us to get it over the line ultimately and finished and get it to the president's desk by July 4th. And that's a big thing.
Joining us now, NBC News national affairs analyst and a partner and chief political columnist at Puck, John Heilemann, as well as special correspondent at Vanity Fair and host of the Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong Fast. John Heilemann, I don't know much about politics, but one thing I do know is that the Senate really doesn't love it when the House lectures them on what to do. The Senate certainly does not necessarily view them as equal branches of government. But there are some real challenges for this bill going forward. We'll get to that in just a moment. But start, though, with just what this means for the House. A win for Speaker Johnson, yes, but really a win for President Trump, who showed yet again the vice-like grip he has over the GOP.
Yeah, that's right, John. I think, Donald Trump went up there and made his case. There was no margin for error, and they got this ball across the goal line here with just, by the thinnest of margins. They have a very thin margin in the House anyway, 215 to 214. They lost 2 Republican votes on this. They could only afford to lose 3, so they made it across. And I said yesterday on the show that, that this bill, I think, is too big to fail. And what I meant by that is this is the only thing that Republicans on Capitol Hill have done so far this year. It's the only thing they are going to do of any consequence this year. It is the whole of the Republican agenda. Good, all the good and the bad that signifies, all the political assets and liabilities and risks. And it's the only thing outside of executive orders, which obviously are hugely consequential. We talked about them for the last 4 months. It's the only thing that Donald Trump's agenda has to show for itself. It is the big, whether you call it a big BS bill or a big beautiful bill, it's a big bill, right? So it had to get passed out of the House. And as you point out, I know we'll get to the Senate, but I still think in the end that it's too big to fail, and that one way or the other, Republicans are probably most likely to get this bill in some form passed this summer. But man, it is going to be a rocky road in the upper chamber, partly for reasons that you just suggested, but also because of the bond market, the deficit fears, and a Senate that is going to take some of these choices, the political choices that the House has made, and say that is not going to cut it over here on the senior side of Capitol Hill as they see it.
Yeah, the bond market, a major factor here. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes with Andrew Ross Sorkin when he joins us. Molly, John Heilmann's right. This is the entirety of the Trump Republican agenda. Hakeem Jeffries has deemed it big, ugly bill. Talk to us about why this is actually a pretty politically precarious piece of legislation.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm going to read you a headline from CNBC, right? Food stamps face biggest cut in the program's history under GOP tax bill. So this is a bill that both cuts food stamps, right? That's food for hungry children, right? Medicaid, and also grows the deficit. How do you do that? How do you grow the deficit but also cut stuff for people? What's happening here? And it's a tax cut for very wealthy people. Look, this tax cut, it's just about not having it expire, and then it's all of these taxi promises. By the way, I don't know how this was like a Trump bill crafted by Trump's campaign promises. So there are things in there like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. I'm not sure how you implement that stuff still, right? No tax on tips. What's a tip? I mean, this is just I think that the Senate is going to have problems just even making this stuff real. But I think the top line should be it's going to grow the deficit and cut SNAP for children.
Yeah, and we should note on Medicaid, John Hallman just flagged for us here that a change was made overnight that accelerates when the work requirements kick in from 2029 to 2026. The CBO says that could leave about 10 million Americans uninsured. So, Sam Stein, I mean, the headlines write themselves if you're the Democrats, right? It's taking services away from the poor to give tax cuts to the rich. The Senate has expressed leeriness about some of this. We even heard from MAGA types like Josh Hawley say, hey, don't touch Medicaid. That's such impact on rural red state voters. What do you see happening next when this goes to the upper chamber?
I mean, obviously they're going to change portions of this. You see Hawley saying he's not comfortable with the Medicaid cuts. You see Ron Johnson saying, this is we should break this bill up into two components. But I'm with Heilman here. If everything is rested on this one legislative package, if you have a debt ceiling that's about to hit, and this would raise it, if you have tax cuts that are going to expire soonish, and you need to extend them, then this is it. And because of those forces, I do believe ultimately Republicans will pass something. It's not going to look like what happened last night, or this morning, I should say, but it will be something. And yeah, I think, two things here. One is ample opportunity for Democrats to make politics out of this. Medicaid is extremely popular, and this will slash millions from the rolls of Medicaid, and it's going to deeply complicate things for Republican states as well as Democratic states. And then secondly you could in theory say, well, this whole new Trump era populism, this is a workers' party now, et cetera, et cetera. This is an abandonment of that, frankly, on the merits, right? I mean, the tax cuts are weighted to the rich. Steve Bannon had proposed, taxing high-income earners. Potentially, Trump flirted with it, but he disposed of it. They weren't supposed to touch Medicaid. Trump said, don't F with it. They effed with it, So, like, all those promises, all the realignment of the coalition, this goes against that realignment. Now, maybe that's not enough to move things back, but certainly it gives Democrats fodder.